is in transition until January 20th, but Russia is expanding its reach on several fronts. Take a look at Russia's actions just this week. Russia led talks Tuesday with Iran and Turkey about Syrian war plans, cutting out the U.S. and the UN. Russian sources say they're testing an anti-satellite weapon in space, that they're freezing relations with Obama, and today Russia says it'll respond to new economic sanctions on Kremlin allies that were issued by the Obama administration. Now, this wrangling, of course, comes amidst the controversy over Russia hacking emails that affected the U.S. election. And while some examples of the hacking are widely known, the actual details about Russia's specific role have come mostly in anonymous leaks by U.S. intelligence officials. Some Democratic politicians are treating the intelligence leaks as definitive, a long ways from the often justified skepticism of anonymous intelligence leaks on Iraq, for example, back in the Bush era. Glenn Greenwald, the Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter who broke the NSA surveillance story, says many people are making an old mistake, and he warns, quote, anonymous claims leaked to newspapers about what the CIA believes do not constitute proof, and certainly do not constitute reliable evidence that substitutes for actual evidence that can be reviewed. Have we really not learned this lesson yet? Joining me now is Glenn Greenwald, co-founding editor of The Intercept. A good evening to you, and how would you like to see this skepticism applied?
I'd like to see it applied the way that any rational person, let alone a political citizen, ought to be functioning cognitively and in terms of forming beliefs, which is there's a distinction between, on the one hand, faith-based beliefs, which is when you put your trust in a person or an institution or a religious leader so that when they decree something, you simply assume it's true regardless of evidence because you have faith in that individual to tell you the truth. And the opposite of that is a rational-based way of thinking, which is you don't accept a claim just because somebody makes it. You need to actually see evidence for it so that you can review that evidence and assess whether or not it's persuasive. And this second component is exactly what we're lacking when it comes to claiming that the Russian government is behind these leaks.
Let's stipulate that that evidence is necessary, that it has not come out, that it needs to be declassified. But there is still, Glenn, of course, a spectrum that investigators, lawyers, and intelligence officials all use. And on that spectrum, the argument here is that the public accounting of the emails is known, that there was a lead-up of intelligence about Russia doing this, then it was done, and then since that time there's been a wide variety of, yes, anonymous sources, but in different outlets saying that this was Russia and it had certain political goals. Would you say, though, all of that adds up to circumstantially strong evidence as a general matter?
No. What circumstantial evidence can you point to, Ari? You just identified what agents have claimed, what agencies have claimed, agencies that have a long history of error, that are designed to disseminate disinformation, that are subject to groupthink, that are political actors who have constantly disseminated claims that turned out to be false for whatever their motives might be. You have taken all of those agencies and you just described in your question to me what they claim. What evidence is there, definitive, circumstantial, or otherwise, that they have presented that suggests that the Russian government is behind these leaks? There is none. What is the evidence?
Right. No, I mean, I'm asking you the question. I think the background is what they predicted and then the fact that the emails were released. But yes, to your point, what we want, what everyone's been calling for is some declassified aspect of the motive of what actually shows they might have done it. Now, turning to the politics of this, are you of the view that Democratic elected officials are basically using a different standard because they like and agree with the outcome of this particular set of leaks?
To be completely honest, I think that what Democrats are doing, what they did prior to the election was they thought this was a winning tactic to link Donald Trump to a country that they tried to build into this really scary threat. Barack Obama spent 8 years saying Russia is not the scary threat. He mocked Mitt Romney for trying to do that in 2012. But I think it was an election year tactic. Fear is a really potent weapon. But I think Americans, when they wake up in the morning, don't wake up worried about Vladimir Putin and what the Kremlin is doing. I think it proved to be a losing political technique. And I think since the election, Democrats, like a lot of Americans, including myself, are sort of disoriented, still in shock, and are just grappling for explanations and screaming Putin over and over and accusing critics of being Kremlin stooges. I think that's more just a kind of byproduct of this desperation than it is anything else. And I'm hoping that things will return to reason.
You mentioned that on trying to link critics to Russia, which has a very ugly history in the United States and is a fairly deplorable political tactic. Here is Howard Dean, former chairman of the DNC and a guest on this network, as you know today, saying about your site, The Intercept, quote, "Would be interesting to find out if The Intercept gets money from Russia or Iran." And then responding to an allegation not proven that The Intercept has morphed into a Russian, quote, propaganda machine, Dean says, quote, "That's been the case for a while. I wanted to give you the opportunity to respond."
He sounds like the love child of J. Edgar Hoover and Roy Cohn. It is so ironic. I mean, what Howard Dean just did, as lowly and just unethical as it is, to cast that kind of an insinuation with no evidence whatsoever about a media outlet that has criticized him, that is the tactic that the far right used for decades, Ari, as you know, during the Cold War, to smear every Democrat and every liberal who said we ought to have better relations with Russia, who questioned propaganda from the CIA about the Kremlin. They were told, you're a useful idiot to the Kremlin, you're a disloyal American. There were investigations because of those kind of claims. It's astonishing to watch Democrats resort to those kind of tactics. And just as a political matter, I don't think it's going to get them very far. And ethically, I think it's just reprehensible.
And final question to you, Glenn. You do a lot on espionage, national security. You've also, though, in your past life, written a lot about domestic U.S. politics. Where do you think the Democratic Party and liberals go from here?
I'm really hoping that the Democrats find their footing, because there are a lot of very serious dangers that a Trump presidency poses to a lot of vulnerable populations. And we need an opposition that is focused and reasoned and unified and serious about how to impede certain policy proposals that Donald Trump has suggested he will pursue that can run roughshod over basic civil liberties and the interest of lots of people. And that's the reason why I'm hoping that Democrats stop calling everybody a Putin stooge and stop obsessing on these Russia conspiracy theories and focus on the much more proximate and immediate dangers that a Trump presidency poses.
Glenn Greenwald, as always, thanks for your time.